My name is Ethan Harper, and I reside in New York City, where the lights never dim and the hustle and bustle never ceases. To an outsider, my life may seem idyllic: a steady job, a happy family, and a wife whom I've cherished for 15 years. I never could have foreseen the startling reality that would soon confront me. As the fading sunlight streamed into the kitchen, I sat with a cold coffee in hand, gazing out at the luminous streetlights while a sense of darkness enveloped my heart. Recently, I sensed a growing distance between Sarah and me. She started returning home later, our date nights became infrequent, and our conversations grew shorter, as if an invisible chasm was widening between us. Though I tend to be reserved and lost in my work, I couldn't ignore these shifts. Each evening, I eagerly awaited Sarah's return, only to be met with fleeting interactions as she passed by me as though I were a mere shadow. I didn't hold her responsible. I understood the demands of her job, but this time it felt different. Something felt amiss. A sensation elusive yet undeniable. And then, in a sudden revelation, the truth dawned on me, plain yet harsh. Sarah returned home, her entry casual and indifferent. Disregarding my presence, she proceeded to undress. I sat there quietly, the unease deepening within me. Today was the day I resolved not to ignore that inexplicable feeling any longer. The subtle emptiness in my heart was now crystal clear. I could no longer remain silent. Setting down my coffee cup with a heavy heart, I mustered the courage to speak up. "Sarah," I called out, my voice steady but resolute. She paused, turning to me with a dispassionate gaze, showing no surprise. "What's going on?" she inquired, her tone neutral, as if our connection was never significant enough to warrant concern. I attempted to maintain a composed demeanor, suppressing my emotions, yet I couldn't evade the question I had evaded for so long. "I know you're being unfaithful," I uttered, not in anger but with a deep sense of sorrow. "And I suspect this has been." I watched as Sarah's eyes slightly widened and a forced smile flashed across her face. Not one of relief, but a fear of being caught. "Here we go again," she sighed lightly, attempting to brush off what I had just disclosed. "Ethan, you know how demanding my job is. What's the matter with you? Can't you understand that sometimes I have important meetings?" I shook my head in silence. Sarah never seemed to grasp my feelings. "You keep saying I can't understand, but that's not the point," I stated, my voice unwavering even as my eyes betrayed my disappointment. "You return home late, make vague work trips. I'm not oblivious, Sarah. I know you're not being honest with me." She remained quiet, not reacting, devoid of anger. She simply stood there, looking at me with a tired gaze, as if she had heard enough of my accusations. "Why can't you see that I have desires, Ethan? You haven't been able to fulfill me physically for years, and I need something more," she finally admitted. "So you're saying I'm not enough for you as your husband?" I clenched my jaw. Feeling a mix of hurt and confusion, I clenched my jaw, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "Am I just perceived as an emotionless machine, incapable of meeting your needs?" She pressed her lips together, delaying her response. When she finally spoke, her words were sharp. "I'm not saying that, but you seem oblivious to my needs. Our relationship has been strained for a while." Her words pierced me like a knife, but instead of anger, I felt emptiness. Despite her justifications, I couldn't shake off the sense of betrayal. Standing up, I moved closer to her. "I don't care about your actions," I stated, voice soft but firm. "But I refuse to tolerate deception and being treated as insignificant." She remained silent, her demeanor shifting. Gone was the arrogance, replaced by hesitation and fear, as if she now realized there was little left to salvage. After a prolonged silence, she spoke, her voice trembling. "Can you find it in your heart to forgive me?" I gazed at her, feeling the ache in my chest, but I shook my head. She had crossed a line that I could not overlook. "No, Sarah. I can't allow you to continue causing me pain. Expect me to forgive you. You've made your choice, and now it's time for me to make mine." Sarah stood frozen in the living room, her eyes reflecting fear and regret. My words had not only exposed the truth, but also signaled an unavoidable end. I was no longer the patient and forgiving man she once knew. Despite my lingering anger, I no longer felt the same desperation I had endured for months. As she moved closer, avoiding my gaze, I realized I was done with gentle words and unconditional forgiveness. "I'm exhausted," I murmured, the weariness evident in my voice, no longer content being on the sidelines of her life. I couldn't continue to watch from afar while neglecting mine own. Sarah remained silent, tears brimming in her eyes, hinting at remorse. But I questioned whether it was too late to salvage what was left between us. I made the decision to stop giving her additional chances to explain herself. "Do you understand how this makes me feel?" I inquired, moving closer to her with unwavering eye contact. "Does it not affect you to see me hurt, watching as you spend time with other men while I suffer alone? I am the one you call your husband, yet I receive no respect in return." Sarah visibly struggled, turning away briefly in search of words to mend the situation, only to realize there was nothing more to be said. "It's a terrible feeling, isn't it?" I pressed on, my tone laced with bitterness. "I have endured and shown patience, yet what about you? There is no respect in the way you treat me. I feel insignificant in your life." Sarah turned back to me, tears welling up in her eyes and spilling over uncontrollably. I'm at a loss for words," she stuttered, her voice trembling. "I know I erred, but I need you. I can't articulate what went wrong, Ethan." I met her tearful gaze, finding it hard to offer forgiveness so readily. "You claim to need me, yet I don't see true. You depend on me, but you also seek other forms of satisfaction and fulfillment. There are needs you have that I can no longer meet, which is why you seek them elsewhere." Sarah took a step back, visibly affected by my words. Each time she attempted to respond, she struggled, saying, You can't understand. I don't love them," her eyes filled with despair. "It's just that I couldn't bear the loneliness anymore. You weren't there, Ethan. You're no longer the man I can confide in completely. You've changed." Moving closer, my expression cool yet masking deep disappointment, I echoed, "I changed. Don't you see? You changed first. The moment you stopped considering me your partner and only saw me as a pointless companion." Sarah dropped her gaze, unable to offer further explanation. She recognized her misstep, but was it too late to mend the rift I felt? "I've known you loved me for a long time," I confessed, a twinge of pain in my chest. "But your love wasn't enough to prevent the deception. You didn't love me enough." "I'm sorry, Ethan. I didn't intend to cause you harm," Sarah tearfully confessed, her facade crumbling. The room was engulfed in a heavy silence as I observed Sarah's vulnerability, feeling no sympathy. Despite the pain I endured to reach this point, granting her another chance seemed implausible. "Apologies won't suffice now," I stated firmly, emphasizing the gravity of Sarah's actions. As she approached me, desperation in her eyes, I turned a blind eye to her pleas. "I can't continue this relationship any longer, Sarah," I declared unsympathetically. "There's no repairing the damage. My decision is final." Sarah collapsed on the couch, tears flowing incessantly, no longer offering excuses, only silent sobs. I shed tears, but I could not forgive the betrayal. The apologies came too late. When Sarah departed, I didn't feel emptiness. It was as though everything had long ended and a new beginning awaited me. I made the choice to embrace a fresh chapter, refusing to be consumed by the pain. Instead, I sought out the lost joys of years past by engaging in activities I had neglected because of her. Each day brought a sense of empowerment, no longer shackled by the betrayal. Sarah gradually faded from significance in my life. I moved forward, determined to live independently as a stronger individual unencumbered by unhealable wounds. Following Sarah's departure, the once shared space in the house fell eerily silent. Every nook we had filled was now vacant and cold, yet I found no hollow emptiness like before. A sense of peace enveloped me, rather than despair. A part of me was relieved to be free from her shadow, while another part, buried deep, still held on to resentment. Bitterness consumed me as I reflected on the betrayal I had experienced. Retribution was not in my nature. I have always been reserved, patient and enduring, yet this time, I felt compelled to take action. It was not to inflict harm on her, but to convey the seriousness of her deeds. From that moment, I meticulously devised a plan. My intention was not to ruin her, but to show her the irreparable damage she had caused. I methodically collected evidence, messages, calls, meetings, all carefully documented. Part of me desired her to confront the harsh reality, while another, more vulnerable part, wished for Sarah to comprehend my anguish. Subsequently, I spent the following days discreetly observing her every move, meticulously tracking her interactions. She carried on with her life, mingling with those men, unaware of my awareness. I was privy to her involvement with David, Bob, and other liaisons she had. I was equipped with all the necessary tools to handle this betrayal: evidence, patience, and a well-thought-out plan. One night, as Sarah went out, I seized the opportunity to enact the first part of my strategy. Stealthily, I shadowed her without her knowledge, aware of her intended destination and actions. It felt almost like observing a game being played out, yet the other part of me, the part reeling from hurt, sensed a peculiar anticipation, as if awaiting a significant moment. Although I couldn't shake off the memory of her actions, I refused to let resentment and envy dictate my emotions. Upon Sarah's late return that night, I stood prepared. I refused to prolong the avoidance of the situation any further. Sitting in the darkness, I waited in silence. As she entered and switched on the lights, I rose to my feet and confronted her, sensing her surprise and fear in her gaze. "Ethan," she stammered nervously, I didn't expect you to be back so soon. Check early," I said, my voice low but laced with coldness. "I am aware of your whereabouts and actions, Sarah." Sarah remained motionless, her eyes widening in disbelief at my revelation. She stood silently, attempting to formulate a response. However, I had no need for explanations, as I already possessed all the necessary information. "David, correct?" I inquired calmly. "And Bob, among other men you've been involved with?" Sarah stood wordless, tears welling in her eyes. "I am sorry," she choked out. "I am at a loss for words. I was mistaken, but please don't do this. I still hold love for you." "Love?" I scoffed. "You claim to love me while engaging with other men, treating me as though I am inept at fulfilling you." As she approached, her eyes pleaded for forgiveness, yet I was not receptive to further apologies. "You cannot deceive me any longer, Sarah," I stated, my tone retaining its icy veneer. "I have withstood enough, and now it is time for you to face consequences." Standing motionless with her eyes brimming with regret, she remained silent as I addressed her. It was evident she carried a heavy burden of guilt, but I had resolved to no longer dwell in the agony of the past. "You need not explain further," I asserted firmly, unwavering in my decision. With a resolute voice, I affirmed, "I am aware of everything, and now it is time to reveal the truth." Retrieving my laptop, I initiated a video that displayed incontrovertible evidence of her betrayal. Sarah's gaze fixated on the screen, her expression betraying a dawning realization of the extent of her deception. The footage captured her interactions with David and Bob, their embraces and kisses laid bare for her to see. I confronted her matter-of-factly, devoid of emotion. "You thought you could deceive me endlessly. The repercussions must be faced not just by you, but also by those you involved." No further action was required, as the truth was now unmistakable. Rendered speechless, Sarah stood frozen, tears cascading down her cheeks, while I remained impassive, fueled by determination. The room descended into a heavy silence, interrupted only by Sarah's muffled sobs as she stood there. Her hands clenched in turmoil, her fingers tightened, struggling to grasp onto remnants slipping through her hands, yet tears continued to stream down her face. I stood motionless, devoid of sympathy. Years of enduring had solidified my resolve, and this quiet between us was the final seal on my pain. "I cannot forgive you," I uttered softly but firmly. "You've crossed boundaries beyond repair. I cannot bear witness to your continued infliction of harm." Sarah wept, gazing up at me with pleading eyes. "I made a mistake, Ethan. I'm so sorry. I can't undo it, but I feel remorse. You mean everything to me, yet I betrayed you." I could no longer listen to her apologies. the same words echoing without change. "Apologies can't mend the damage, Sarah," I croaked, my voice strained. "I can't return after what transpired. Hollow words and regrets without action cannot sustain me." A sharp breath escaped her as she recoiled, as though struck by an invisible force. "Ethan," she began, attempting to speak, but finding herself at a loss for words. In that moment, neither of us uttered another sound. Standing in silence, we maintained a distant gaze. It was clear she regretted her actions, yet regret couldn't mend what was broken. I felt hollow, not due to a lack of love for her, but rather from the exhaustion of enduring a relationship marred by repeated turmoil. Sarah was no longer a presence in my life. Instead, I devoted the day to introspection, purging myself of the negative remnants she had left behind. My sentiments towards her had evolved into detachment and determination. My sole pursuit now was to rediscover myself and reclaim the strength that had slipped away. Later that night, Sarah reached out to me. Initially hesitant, I eventually answered the call. Her once assured voice now trembled with vulnerability. "Ethan, I acknowledge my mistakes and I still love you deeply. I am lost on how to mend what I have broken. I am willing to do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness." I remained silent, grappling with my own conflicted emotions. I no longer wished to entertain those words, nor did I harbor the desire to return to her living within insincere apologies. I came to understand that forgiveness didn't always lead to happiness. "I can't forgive you," I gently yet firmly replied, my voice conveying resolution. "It's not that my love for you has dwindled, but I cannot continue residing in falsehood. Sarah, my decision is final." The line remained quiet after my declaration, with a weighty silence enveloping us both. Eventually, Sarah broke the silence, expressing, "I comprehend. No matter what unfolds, know that I love you." I chose not to respond, understanding that some fractures are irreparable. As I embarked on the journey to reconstruct my life following Sarah's departure, the initial days were dedicated to self-reflection. Roaming the familiar streets of New York, I revisited the cakes once frequented with Sarah, feeling a gradual lightness wash over me. No longer constrained by the shadows of betrayal, I could finally relinquish the facades of a failing marriage. I no longer dwelled on the past. I returned to the neglected projects and poured all my energy into them. I reconnected with the small joys I had overlooked, caught up with old friends, and rediscovered a sense of liberation. The anger and pain I once felt were replaced by a strange peace. I attended yoga classes, socialized with friends, and started living for myself. One day, I realized that Sarah was no longer a prominent figure in my thoughts. The emptiness I once felt was gradually replaced by a newfound freedom. While my life wasn't perfect, I had found inner peace and freedom from the past. I was no longer held back by memories of a marriage that couldn't be salvaged. I had rediscovered myself. I realized that seeking revenge was not a path to freedom. While forgiveness was challenging, it was not the only option. I decided to pursue a life where I could authentically be myself, free from feeling diminished or betrayed by others. I'm now moving forward into a new chapter of my life, feeling liberated and empowered like never before.